Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Missing Frames. This is the podcast where we watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. I'm your host, Shawn Eastridge. We are hanging out on the Nerd Party Network. Check out thenerdparty.com. Tons of great podcasts on there. You can follow us on Twitter at Join Nerd Party, like the Facebook page, which is just The Nerd Party, and the Instagram, it's the same thing, at The Nerd Party. And speaking of The Nerd Party, we are bringing back one Mr. John Mills, who has not been on the show at all in 2020. What is even happening right now? John, welcome back.
I think this is the turning point for 2020.
I haven't been on the show. End every problem we've run into. Everything's good. We're all happy. All the problems are gone, and it's all thanks to this.
And it's not even a sequel. Is it?
It's not even a sequel.
It's not even a sequel.
This is technically, even if it was a sequel, this is part of a quote unquote thematic trilogy in Leone's filmography. So, but this is not, it's the first part of that trilogy. So it's not a sequel even in that regard. But what we are going to be watching is Once Upon a Time in the West, which many people I think believe is Leone's masterpiece.
I've heard that.
And considering the films he's made, the Fistful of Dollars trilogy, which includes The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Once Upon a Time in America, that's saying a lot. And Once Upon a Time in the West is a film that John has never seen before.
No, I have not. I've never seen Once Upon a Time in the West, which is sort of shocking. I love Westerns. There are a couple of blind spots here and there. But yeah, it's I love the Man with No Name trilogy, or the Dollars trilogy, whatever you want to call it. And I like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of my favorite films in the genre. I can't even put into words how much I love it. And I know not everybody shares the opinion, but it also has one of the greatest pieces of music ever created for a film score, or possibly in the history of film, which is, L'Estasi dell'Oro, the Ecstasy of Gold.
Oh, I was hoping you were about to perform it for us.
No, I am not. But like that is an incredible piece of music in and of itself. So it's like, and what's interesting, what I'm really excited about this one, not having seen it, is that in that Dollars trilogy, I was explaining this to my kids because they haven't watched it yet, and they were like, "Oh, well, why do you love it, Daddy?" And I was like, because you see a filmmaker grow. So I'm excited to see what his next step is in this process, because you look at Fistful of Dollars and you're like, this is cute, it's got charm, this is fun, I like this, but
it's it's basically almost shot for shot remake of Yojimbo, Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo,
which I've also never seen. So
someday, John, someday.
Hey, listen, man, I've seen Seven Samurai and a couple others, so it counts.
You're good. You're good.
And then you go to A Few Dollars More and you get Lee Van Cleef thrown into the mix, and you're like, okay, this is getting fun, this is getting good. And then you get to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and you're like, he's arrived. This is a filmmaker. Yes. This is somebody who knows what he's doing now. So I'm excited.
I remember being so confused because I saw The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly first, and I went back and watched the others, Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, and being so confused because the actor, he plays two different characters. One of the actors, I can't remember his name, but he's in both For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I was like, is he supposed to be the same person? No. Okay.
Right.
So we just love this guy so much that he's in the movie again. Sure. Why not? Okay, great. But that was, it was the same thing for me. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is the one that I feel like everyone's heard of. And that was the one that I'd heard of. I bought the film, not realizing it was part of a trilogy, not realizing that it was the end of a trilogy. But you don't really have to see the other two to get it. I mean, understand who Clint Eastwood is right from the get-go. He's a fully formed character, and you just go along with it. So I really, really loved it. It just completely blew me away. And this was in the midst of, I know we talked about this because you introduced me to The Wild Bunch, which is a classic. And we talked a lot about my exposure to Westerns and my experience getting into that genre. And The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was really kind of the thing that kickstarted it. And
Mhm.
I wanted to learn more about Leone, and I wanted to learn more about great Westerns in general. And I think just based on what I'd been reading, Once Upon a Time in the West seemed like a natural next step. I'm pretty sure I can't remember when I watched this in terms of if I watched the whole Man with No Name trilogy first and then went to this, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this happened. It might have happened right after I saw The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I ran out and bought this one. And the biggest shock for me, and I haven't seen this since that was 2010. I haven't seen this since 2010. I've seen it once. I barely remember this. This could practically be a missing frames for me too.
Oh,
What
cool.
I remember the most about it is, first of all, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that obviously he'd concluded his Man with No Name trilogy. Once Upon a Time in the West is almost the start of a new phase of his filmmaking, in
Mhm.
that it is, whereas The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and those films are a little bit more fast paced, a little bit more energetic, this is more methodically paced. It's a little slower, and I think that threw me off. I didn't realize that when I watched it. So my initial reaction to it was kind of like, this is good, but let me go back to the Clint Eastwood stuff. That stuff's more
Sure.
fun. I remember being kind of just amazed in general, because how can you not be amazed by Leone's work as a director, by the film score? Again, Morricone, I mean, he just passed away. First of all, just like you said, he's an absolute legend, but you have this incredible score here. You have this incredible cinematography. It's almost more mature in a way, and it makes you pay a little more attention. And I wasn't prepared for that. I was expecting it to be like, oh, it's crazy, and everybody says this is his masterpiece. And based on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I can only imagine how good this is going to be. And I think it caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for it.
But see, that makes sense, but at the same time, it's like, there are different cuts of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? And I definitely think that I guess we can call it the director's cut or whatever, does have that slightly more, you see that more methodical pace come out, like when the Man with No Name is lost in the desert and walking around. Like, you see a little bit of that growth happen where he's being a little bit more patient within the framework of this more energetic stuff that's going on. So I'm guessing that probably pays off with this next step. And it's really just interesting because I don't know how I'm going to react to the film. But when you talk about Leone, all anybody ever talks about is the Man with No Name trilogy. And it's like, I feel bad for any director that gets pigeonholed like that, where it's their body of work is bigger than what they're known for. But it's like, I think just over time, I've come to understand why it can be frustrating over time for an artist, be they an actor or a director, to constantly have to talk about that. You know, like Tim Curry having to talk about Rocky Horror Picture Show by this point. It's got to be like, oh, really? We're going to talk about that? There's nothing new I could say by this
I was
point.
in Home Alone 2, and this is what
Right.
you choose to talk with
Yes,
me about?
exactly. Right. You know, you got to talk about I was Pennywise, for Pete's sake. You know, and I didn't need CG to scare kids back then. And it's one of those things where I feel bad for any director that gets put in that category, you know, where like they can't break away from what they're known for.
And what it sounds like is he had wanted to stop making Westerns after The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But when he was trying to finance his new film, he kind of he'd gotten Henry Fonda involved, and essentially the studio was like, all right, but we want you to make another Western. You have to make another Western. And he was kind of like, okay, fine, I'll do another Western. And like you said, you get the sense with this one that he's testing the boundaries of himself as a filmmaker, as an artist, and whatever he had been relying on in terms of his own storytelling technique. You get the sense that this is almost an experimental film. And it's not
Mhm.
like, it's nothing like David Lynch or something like that, but there are moments where you're kind of like, you get the sense that he's like, I don't care how bored you are, like, pay attention. This is something like
Right.
this is purposeful. It's not. I'm not like. It's kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Maybe if you've only seen Star Wars and you're like, oh, Stanley Kubrick did a sci-fi movie. I don't know anything about it. Yeah, let me check that out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, all right. It's very purposefully done in a way to kind of make you lean in a little bit, and it's like, okay, you're gonna have to get on my level and on my rhythm to understand what I'm trying to do here.
I have a great example along those lines of expectations and genre with Kubrick. You, me, and Tristan Riddell right here on the Nerd Party. Was it on Filibuster where we did this?
I think it was The
Where,
Shining.
yeah, The Shining, where I'd spent decades hating that movie because I was a big horror buff and everyone's like, you got to see The Shining. It's a great horror film. And I'm like, 17, 18 years old. I'm like, all right, let's watch The Shining finally. And like at the end of it, I'm like, what the hell is this? But then I rewatch it years later. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's what I'm curious to watch this again. It's not that I didn't like it the first time I saw it. It's just the fact that I was thrown off by the slower pacing and the more thoughtful nature of
Right.
it. It's not as conventional. It's not as clearly cut like, oh, there's a good guy and there's a hero you root for and there's a bad guy. It was a little more, it's a bit more complex. And it's clear Leone is also stretching the limits of himself as a filmmaker and trying to find a new language, a new cinematic language to tell his story. So I'm curious to see, similar to your experience with The Shining, I've seen so much since 2010 and my tastes have changed so much and they've evolved. If I watch this and I'm suddenly like, oh my God, this is amazing, or if I still kind of am like, oh, it is still a little slow. But one of the other things I remember was a big deal reading about this and learning more about its history. Henry Fonda is the lead, or one of the leads, and he's also a villain. And that was not something people were expecting. And I think it hurt the movie when it was first released because Henry Fonda, he's one of the kind of classic all-American good guys.
Right.
And people were not prepared to see him take on the role of such a nasty person. Just the example that comes to mind is maybe Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo. When you go see Vertigo and you're like, I like this guy. He's like super nice. He's charming. And you watch Vertigo and he's kind of a creep. And you're like, wait a second, I'm supposed to like him. Why don't I like him? I think Henry Fonda in this movie is a very similar thing where you're so used to seeing him in a particular role. You see him here and it's almost a little off-putting in a way.
That's interesting in and of itself because there is such a fine line that you work with that because, for instance, there's no doubt that with Breaking Bad, Bryan Cranston's cachet that he built up as lovable sitcom dad was used to that show's advantage. And I wonder if there's a sort of thing now where we expect and root for somebody to play a good villain after being the person that we love on screen, because for a time, especially, there was a certain amount of excitement that I remember about movies, especially in the 90s, where it was like, they're finally playing a bad guy. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. All right, I'll watch this. That's fine. But, it's the same sort of thinking. Just to speak to what you're talking about with Henry Fonda, it's the same sort of thinking why the same actor or actress would play a role on stage for 40 years is because you were that role. That's what people wanted to see. And that's it. And if you appeared in something else, the world doesn't make sense anymore, sort of thing.
Yeah. Breaking Bad's a great one to bring up. And I know Vince Gilligan is also a huge fan of this film, but it is funny how not lately, but like really, we're so much more open to that. We almost welcome it when a comedic actor goes serious. Like when Jim Carrey was in The Truman Show or Eternal Sunshine, it was like, oh my God, look at him. He's so versatile. He could do so much. I think our tastes have changed where a lot of film fans and audiences are a bit more accepting. Like they're willing to be like, I just want to see you succeed. I like you. I want to see you succeed in the role. Whereas back then, I guess it was a little bit more if you're seeing a movie starring Henry Fonda, because this was a Hollywood that was still not necessarily completely dominated by the star system, but it was still that kind of era where if you go see a Henry Fonda film, you'd better get a Henry Fonda film or else you're disappointed.
Exactly right. And so, I mean, the thing is that just everything about that actually makes me kind of excited to see this finally, because it does, break its rule and break the rules or what have you in those terms. And I know so little about this. I know it's a Western. I know Henry Fonda's in it. I know Sergio Leone. I know Ennio Morricone, and I've loved all of their work before. So like I go into this and I'm just like, ooh, okay. I'm excited. Let's watch it. Yeah.
I am too. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen this, and I'm very curious to see what I think. Just after all these years, if it's something where, like I said, it doesn't even necessarily. It's something that doesn't need to hold up to a memory, because my memory of it is being kind of like a little put off by it, but also not completely disengaged with it. So I'm curious to see if I can watch it with a very fresh perspective, almost seeing it for the first time, and if it'll hold up. But I say let's do it. Let's get to it, and we will come back to figure out what we thought.
Now available to own on video cassette.
And we're back. John, what did you think about Once Upon a Time in the West?
I think, do you play or do you shoot too? This is a really tough one for me to approach, because I recognize its shortcomings. I recognize that, like any spaghetti Western, the dubbing, like the mix of people speaking English and the people being dubbed, kind of drives me insane. But at the same time, it's got so much style to spare. It's got so much just bravado, just go for broke attitude to it, that it's incredibly endearing, and I wind up loving it just because it's one of those things where it's a lot like, I know I make reference to it all the time in all of these places and outlets and everything, but like Star Trek V, where it's like, it's kind of clunky.
Only here,
Only
ladies
here.
and gentlemen, John Mills compared Once Upon a Time in the West to Star Trek V. Let's go. Let's hear it. Let's do this.
No. I just mean, all I mean is strictly in terms of the fact that I can recognize the shortcomings of a film, but still love it because its spirit is so pure, so good, so enjoyable, and it hits the big moments just right. And so I wind up loving it. How did you come away from it?
Well, first I want to address the dubbing, because I don't think we talked about it beforehand, but that was something that I struggled with Leone in general. Was when I watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for the first time, I was like, am I doing, like, is the soundtrack off? Is there something wrong with my DVD? And I had to do a ton of, I was like, do I watch it in the original Italian? And then I realized, I'm like, is there original Italian? Who's speaking what language? Because Clint Eastwood is American, but he looks like he's just saying the words, but they dubbed over anyway. So there was so much confusion. It took so much internet research to figure out that Leone, first of all, he's Italian, he doesn't speak English. And he would essentially just have everyone speak their own languages based on whatever the lines were in the script. He would dub them over, sometimes using the actors who played the part in the movie, and depending on what territory it was showing in. But he would do that not just as a means of, like, because it was convenient, but because he didn't really care about capturing the audio on set. He wanted to be able to play music to set the mood. He wanted to be able to do whatever he wanted that would allow him to achieve his vision on the day. And it took me a little while. I thought it was funny you brought that up, because it did. I remember when I was first watching Leone movies and getting used to the style, that was something it took a little bit. But I will say, once you overcome that hurdle and you're like, okay, it's dubbed, it's pretty easy, and it's pretty well done. I mean, you really, it doesn't take me out of the movie that much. That's a completely different topic from what you asked me. I loved this movie. I recognized all the things that I didn't connect to when I was younger and when I first saw it about a decade ago. It's incredibly slow. There's a really hilarious story about a projectionist who worked at a movie theater where this movie just played over and over again. And Leone went to the movie theater, was signing autographs, and this projectionist was like, I hate you so much. I had to watch this movie so many times, and it's so damn slow. And it is slow. But boy, I want to reiterate, it's slow in the way that those masterful films like Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, that very intentional, very purposeful pacing, where it sets the mood and it puts you right in the headspace of this very particular style of filmmaking that Leone wants you to be on board with.
Yes, and he does it right from the outset with those three guys who show up at the station and everything taking so long. The structure of this film struck me as more like it's a literary film. By that, what I mean is it takes the time to let you sit with the characters, even the minor ones, so that you understand them. These three guys that are waiting for our yet another man with no name are at the train station, and we're spending time with them. There's the one who just wants to take a nap, and he's annoyed by the fly. And there's the guy who figures out I can get a drink if I have my hat catch the water. And there's the guy who's sitting there and he just wants to get it over with. He just wants to get this done. And you sit there with them for so long, you know them, so that when they're killed immediately, it's not like, oh, it's just three guys. You're like, oh, wow, those three guys got killed.
You're
and
thinking
like,
you spend I think about 10. It felt like longer because again, we're watching these guys wait and they're doing nothing. It's all these little gags, like you said, the fly, which is just so funny, and you're so endeared to them, even though the implication is like, okay, these guys are bad guys. They come into this guy's shop, this adorable old man with this like goofy smile, like, hey, what's going on? And they're like immediately like, get in the closet. They chase off the Indian woman, and they're just kind of hanging out, and they're the bad guys, but you're like, I guess they're waiting for a train. What is their intention? What is their motivation? What's going on? And Leone's like, no. This is it. This is what we're here for. This is what's happening. And you wait for 10 full minutes as the credits play out, maybe the slowest opening credits, aside from Superman the movie, which at least has John Williams' score to accompany them. Yeah. But the longest opening credit sequence. But, Leone, he hadn't wanted to make another Western. He was done with the Western genre after the Man with No Name trilogy. And he was kind of forced into this by studios that basically said, no, we don't want you to do your other movie, Once Upon a Time in America. We want another Western. That's what you're known for. That's what we want. That's what we're buying. So he had to find a way to make it exciting for him, and not just the story, which is very unconventional for even a Western. It feels kind of unconventional. Mm-hmm. But the way he sets this first scene up, it's almost like he's rediscovering his love of filmmaking and the love and the uniqueness of cinema, because it is so driven by visuals, like the stunning shots of just like these three guys walking into this room, so many frames, and so like the production design and the cinematography, the way it's framed by Tonino, I think it's Tonino Dellicoli is the cinematographer.
Yeah, that's as close as I'm going to get to pronunciation.
That's as close as we're going to get. We'll say Dellicoli, because I think Dellicoli sounds like a really awesome name to say.
It does.
But the way it's framed and these beautiful close-ups, which Leone is so well known for, contrasted with these amazing landscapes. But it's almost like he's rediscovering his cinematic language, and also discovering like a new love of sound design, because sound is so prevalent throughout the whole movie, but especially this first scene really plants that seed of like, this is what this movie is going to feel like.
Yeah. And I especially enjoy the gags on this. I like the fact that what he's setting up here with this deliberate pacing isn't just, this is the way I want to make a film, but also getting us used to inhabiting this world, which really was, 99% boredom and 1% thrill. It wasn't, this is the antithesis of those John Wayne Westerns like Hondo that came out in the 50s and everything like that, where it's like every moment is an action and adventure sort of thing. He's very much building this world that's probably much more realistic of there's nothing going on and there's just a lot of desert and we're going to sit here and wait for things.
It's a romantic ode to the West. I mean, it's even in the title, Once Upon a Time in the West, and yet it's very like you said, it's almost obsessed with the lack of romanticization of the whole thing. It's very obsessed with the little minutia and these little moments that aren't exciting. Like, even Leone was all about that excitement and the energy, and it's got to be engaging and fun, with the Man with No Name trilogy. And in this, he's just purposefully almost challenging himself to go like completely in the opposite direction, but it ends up working so well in a way.
It does. And the thing is, just before we move on too far from talking about Delicoli or Delica, however, he did go on to be the director of photography for an excellent film from 1986 called The Name of the Rose with
I
Sean
was about to
Connery.
say, if you were about to say Star Trek 5 again, I was gonna lose it.
No, although Sean Connery almost was in Star Trek 5, but hey. That's why they called it Shakari. And he was also the director of photography for the Oscar winner Life is Beautiful from
I
1997.
saw that. And you know what's interesting? I thought he'd run camera for all of Leone's movies, but he didn't. He only did it for The
No.
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, this one, and then Once Upon a Time in America, which, you
Yep.
know, Leone didn't direct that many. I think he directed like 7 or 8 films total. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think he did the Man with No Name trilogy. He did a movie before that, and then he did this next trilogy, the Once Upon a Time trilogy, which was Once Upon a Time in the West, uh, A Fistful of Dynamite, or Duck You Sucker, which is maybe my preferred title, and then Once Upon a Time in America. And Once Upon a Time in America was the last time they worked together, and obviously Leone didn't make another film, but like it was just it's fascinating to me that they only worked together for these 3, because when I think Leone, the cinematography in this film and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is so particular. And it's been a while since I've seen A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, and I haven't seen Duck You Sucker. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm sorry for anyone who would rather call it.
I thought that was the title, honestly, because that's what the card says on Amazon Prime, and I'm going to be getting to it very soon.
But it's very I'm curious to go back and watch those to see if the style Leone. I know Leone does have that style, and those really dramatic close-ups were very purposeful and very much a part of his lexicon. But I wonder if working with a different cinematographer changed that.
I think if doing a mental comparison, and it's been a couple of years since I saw the Man with No Name trilogy myself, but one of the things that stood out in this very much, and I know stood out in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly as well, is there's a color saturation and lighting approach that is very, very much more refined than in those first 2 Dollars films, where you have a lot of the same, like it's obvious Leone is the director of all of these movies, but it's almost like somebody switching from acrylics to oils, just in terms of the richness of the color. And there are so many shots in this, like when Cheyenne, Jason Robards' character, shoves the lamp down and it's hanging in front of swinging back and forth in front of Charles Bronson, and it's just this magnetic shot where it's like, wow, like you just want you don't care. This is why I think we don't care about how long the shots take, is because they're so beautiful that it's like I'm enjoying just looking at it.
They're stunning, and Leone knew how to cast. Like,
oh yeah,
these faces, like you discover just the combination of Leone directing and this incredible cinematography, and then these actors who have these just like almost Mount Rushmore, like carved in marble faces that you just could like stare at for days. And I mean that romantically as well as just from a cinematic perspective.
Yeah.
But like, Charles Bronson, Henry Fonda, and what's his name? Jason
Robards.
Jason Robards. Again, like all amazing actors, but also Claudia Cardinale, like all these actors who are just the way they combine just these extreme close-ups with these perfectly cast people. Again, it's like you can hold on those close-ups and you don't have to worry about cutting, just from the strength of the performances, but just like the sheer gall of being like, let's get this really extreme close-up, which I feel like still it wasn't quite the norm in westerns or in cinema yet, like to have these really, really extreme close-ups contrasted with these amazing wide shots of these incredible landscapes. It still feels very unconventional, but like incredibly effective.
It is incredibly effective. And, you talk about the casting. Henry Fonda is so, like, it's such a discovery for me to see him. We talked about this, before we watched it and everything. He's playing against type. People were upset because it was Henry Fonda playing a bad guy. But I
I almost wish I hadn't said anything about that. I kind of regret.
Right.
I don't know if you knew that. Now that I think about it.
Oh no, but just the fact that as I was watching him, I know Henry Fonda from like Fort Apache and all of these sorts of things, and he's amazing, and for this film even to turn it around so that I feel like it's the first time I'm looking at Henry Fonda, like I feel like I'm discovering him for the first time, and just like how incredibly like I just the way that they have, you can tell that Leone is a director who, to your point, he's less concerned with the sound and more concerned with the look. And that really, really comes through with all of these. And what's amazing is we sit here and we say he's not as obsessed with the sound, but then he gets this unbelievable score from Morricone.
Yes.
That's just that finally has a fully
Well,
realized like romantic theme to it too.
Yes. Well, to clarify, the sound, he very clearly is obsessed with sound, especially in this movie. But like in terms of capturing it on set, it didn't matter to him. He didn't care. He had Morricone compose a lot of the score, if not all of it, before, because he wanted to play it on the day, like on the set, to like get those swooping shots and to set the mood and things like that. And it's Morricone has crafted so many memorable scores, and of course the one that leaps to everyone's mind, as it should, is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because it's so iconic. But then you, like you said, this movie carries incredible each character has their own theme, almost.
Mhm.
Like, harmonica plays his harmonica. Cheyenne has this kind of goofy, like trotting along, like almost
Yeah.
comical song. And then, like you said, Jill, she has a this very romanticized, like melodramatic, big, epic, sweeping, beautiful score that accompanies her every moment. This almost mournful, to accompany her very tragic story. Once Upon a Time in the West is such a perfect realization and almost an ode to cinema, and also very purposefully. I think Leone was really putting in a lot of the influence he'd taken, like from films like High Noon and Johnny Guitar and The Searchers, and referencing them in a way. I mean, it's no wonder Tarantino is such a huge fan, as any filmmaker should be. But Tarantino, totally, the idea of like, let me make movies about movies.
Right. And I the whole time I watched this, not the whole time, but like every so often it would come to mind, like possibly my favorite Tarantino film is The Hateful Eight. And I know that's not necessarily everybody's popular choice, but watching this, I'd already felt this way because of course he got Morricone to deliver a tremendous score for him on that film. It's a Western. I saw Jason Robards in this and I was like, oh, that's where Kurt Russell's facial hair was inspired by, sort of thing. And it's like, it's this amazing thing now where I suddenly understand why I loved Hateful Eight so much. It is a Leone movie.
Yes. It's this.
And it's brilliant because of it. Cause it's such a loving homage to this. But in terms of this film, I think the reason I come off loving it is because you could sit there and you could say, well, wait a minute, what about this and what about that in terms of making the story beats go? But I consider a film a tremendous success. There are different reasons you can consider a film a tremendous success, but this is one of those films I consider a tremendous success because I could turn off the audio and just watch the visuals of it. And as everybody knows, I love George Lucas, and he's very much a student of this idea that it's a visual storytelling medium.
Yeah, you still get the idea of what it's about.
Right. I still know what's happening. I know who the bad guy is. I know who the good guy is. This could be in Italian, and I'd still know what was going on. Might not know the particulars of certain things, but I'd know it.
That's a really good point, because I think the biggest thing that is an obstacle, and was for me the first time, and even this time, trying to like it doesn't really, not that the movie doesn't click, but it takes its time unfolding its story, to the point where you're kind of watching and you're like, okay, this guy with the harmonica, is he the hero of the story? What's he doing at this train station? What's he looking for? Why does he keep kind of popping up? He shows up. Then you have Cheyenne, who's introduced, and it's almost like he's not even. I got the impression watching this through, like not knowing who he was, Jason Robards, and forgetting completely what the movie was about. almost thinking like, oh, this is a one-off scene when he shows up and he takes the drink and he brings the handcuffs up into frame. It's so
Yeah,
brilliant.
right. Yeah.
But like, I'm thinking like, oh, this is just a side character and he'll probably disappear after this scene. And of course, with Jill, like, okay, she's the center of the film. She's kind of the heart of the film, and her story is going to be the centerpiece because that's the thing we're planting. But then it's like, but who's Frank? What is this railroad thing going? The movie takes a long time before, I'd say, you don't really start to understand where it's going until maybe a good hour into it.
Oh, yeah.
It's
For
doing a
sure.
lot of setting up. I remember Roger Ebert in his 1969 review of the film, he gave it 2.5 stars out of 4.
Wow.
And he basically said, like, you don't know what the movie's about until you're like halfway through the film, which is true. And I don't know that it's a bad thing, but it's definitely, I can see it as an obstacle for somebody
Yeah.
watching for the first time. So it's interesting you bring that up. And I wonder for you, did you have a tough time piecing it together? Because it was, even for me watching it the second time, and again, it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I didn't remember a lot of it. It did take me a little bit to really piece together, like, oh, I see. So she's on the she owns the property, and they want the railroad to go through, and Frank's been hired to kill the family, but now I started to piece it together a little bit better this time around. But I think the first time I was kind of baffled by who am I rooting for? What's this about? Who's this? Who's that? Did you have any trouble with that?
I wouldn't necessarily say trouble, but my impression was she was looking for gold. She couldn't find the money. She hadn't really married him for love. And I think that's all definitely there. But in terms of why this specific woman and this specific, why that family had been murdered was one of those things where it's like, this isn't really clicking. But then that's harmonica delivers it to you later and says, oh no, because they were going to, come through and they lose the land and all of those sorts of things. And so I too can understand it being an obstacle, but once it does click, I mean, in essence, it's fun that a railroad, or the railroad, I guess, is at the center of the story, because this is very much like a train that starts going and going. And then once it picks up speed, you're moving along the tracks and it just keeps going until it's done, sort of thing. I can sit there and I can put my impatient audience hat on and say, oh, well, why do I have so many minutes with these 3 guys? Just have the guys show up and just have the train roll in.
Right.
I'll save you 10 minutes right there. Or, oh, why is her wagon trip taking so long? Yeah. Beautiful mountains. Okay, let's cut this down to 1 minute. Like in essence, what I find most amazing about the film is that there wasn't some jerk ass producer who sat down and said, no. Let me tell you what I'm going to do, kid. I'm going to cut this down. We're going to get this down to 2 hours. We can cut a whole hour out of this movie and just deliver it that way. And so the fact that it wasn't done, I think is terrific, especially because, in the Man with No Name trilogy, female characters, question mark, right? Whereas this, he seems to become aware of it and say, I want a strong female character at the center of this.
Well, apparently it was a struggle. Like, it was a struggle to get Leone to agree to it. But once he agreed to it, I can't remember who it was. It was one of the screenwriters. I think it might have been
Argento.
No, I think it was Bertolucci.
Really?
Who said we should have a female lead, and Leone was like, I don't want to do that. But eventually he kind of came on board, and once he came on board, he committed to it. And I think maybe, I don't know if he overtly said it, but it's in the film, you get the vibe of it. But I think he realized, kind of like what you were saying, how much of again, the film is self-aware in a way that's not obnoxious, but it knows it's a film that almost knows it's a film. It takes its time. It's enjoying and relishing in the fact that it's a beautiful film. And I think it's, again, with the thematic stuff that he's exploring, and especially with the female protagonist at the center, it's almost a commentary on that. Like, once he kind of realized the importance of that and what it said about him as a filmmaker, you can tell he really, really relishes that opportunity and the chance to kind of, it's like, well, you think I'm a misogynist? Well, how about now? Like, what do you think now? Like, that kind of stuff.
It would be interesting to me, though, because I think that there could be certain lenses that people would look at this film through that they wouldn't be necessarily pleased with the way that Jill is portrayed.
It's true, yeah.
But I found her to be a fascinating character because of the fact she shows up and the first framing of her is fresh young wife, come in and going to come with his family. Oh, it's so tragic. And then you find out, well, she has a bit of a history that her husband didn't know about.
Yeah.
Down in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Well, she also maybe when she sees the opportunity with Frank, she tries to turn things to her advantage. She actually becomes a powerful character in that.
Well, that's
scene.
what I think it is. I think what's important about it is that she never, despite her, she's not like a gunslinger. She's not like one of these guys who's going to run out and kill somebody. But she's smart and she's intelligent, and her willpower is so strong. And there's that moment where I think if she's either talking to Frank or Cheyenne, I think it's Cheyenne when she like just goes on this rant. She's like, "Do what you need with me. It doesn't matter." And it's intense, but it's like you feel that sense of like a woman who has agency and is in control of her destiny. And that's the impression I get throughout, even though she is she's somewhat passive throughout the film. Like she's not actively like she obviously wants revenge on Frank, but she doesn't really take it. Revenge isn't really hers to take in a strange way because Harmonica almost by tragedy struck him first. So he's the one who has the rightful place, even though we don't learn about that till the end. But even though she is relatively kind of on the sideline for a little bit, you do get the sense of like she's maybe the most important character here. And it pays off at the end. The moment, again, I love the line where he's basically like, "Hey, if one of these guys happens to grab your ass, just make believe it's nothing and just go out there and show them, like you don't know what it's like. You don't know what that'll do to a man. Like to see a beautiful woman like you go out and bring them a drink of water is a beautiful thing." It almost pays off where she kind of becomes this sort of, she's painted as like a savior in a way when she goes out there and starts to give them water. And I love that. I love the way it kind of plays out in that way, even though there's so much going on and there's just this danger all the time of like, who are we following? What are we doing? There's this harmony to every story and the way they intersect and the way everybody interacts. That's really, really beautiful and very moving.
And there's a very, very uncomfortable scene when Harmonica and Jill first interact.
Yes.
And it's horrifying because you're sitting there going, "Oh no, please don't let it."
Well, because you don't know
happen.
You really, the movie doesn't tell you who you're supposed to be rooting for. You're kind of rooting for Jill because Jill is in the unfortunate position of her family was killed and you want her to find the guy who did it. But you don't know much about Harmonica, what he's doing, what's his deal? Like what's he in this for? Like what is his motivation? So when that starts to happen, you start to think, oh wait, maybe this guy isn't like the typical man with no name, like Clint Eastwood, the heroic type who comes in and fixes the problems. You start to think like, oh, maybe it's a Henry Fonda situation where you weren't expecting Henry Fonda to be the one killing the family.
But see, that's one of the things where I think what is great is you don't know who to root for. There's nobody really to root for. Even Jason Robards, as charming and funny as he is, this guy, he isn't just, an outlaw. This is a guy who's like basically shot his way out of prison numerous times. And so Harmonica is like, when I was originally, when I was first, just processing it afterward and just thinking through, one of the things that came to mind was, this is another man with no name. Why wasn't it Eastwood? And sort of the thinking is it can't be Eastwood because it can't be that character, because that character is noble. That character is good. Whereas this character, he doesn't really care about Jill, and he likes Cheyenne, and they sort of form a friendship. All he cares about, and you don't, figure it out till later and everything, all he cares about is getting to Frank. And everybody else and everything else is a tool to get to that point. Even though he forms something of a friendship with Cheyenne by the end, he's used Cheyenne as a tool to get the land, to piss off Frank, to force the confrontation, which is this whole thing as well, where, you could put on your hat and say, well, why doesn't he just get into a shootout? And it's like, that's part of the whole
It's kind of the message of the movie. It's like, no.
Yeah.
We gotta hold your
But
horses. We're
but
getting there.
it's entrancing because harmonica is trying to get Frank to realize who he is. You realize it's not going to be any fun for him until Frank can figure out who he is.
Yeah.
And Frank doesn't get there until the end. And then Frank, oh,
Exactly.
wow.
Same with the audience. The audience, Leone, again, the storytelling is very unconventional. You have to wait to start to piece things together, and you have to kind of play an active role. The movie doesn't coddle you. It basically is like, no, you have to pay attention. We're gonna go fast. Fast. No, we're gonna go very, very slowly, but also we're gonna dole out information in a way that's not easily digestible. You have to put these pieces together. And one of the big puzzles in the film is like, who is Harmonica? Again, what is his point? Like, what's the point of him? He has some vendetta against Frank, but what is it? And man, I'd totally forgotten what the connection was. That payoff
Oh gosh,
is
yes.
it's so effective. It is so powerful and so devastating. And it's almost like you have to watch this movie a few times because that enriches the whole film so much. Just that, like, boom, that ending when it hits you and you have the shot of his brother standing on his shoulders with it's incredible. That reveal was so good.
That is one of those reveals that is reveals can really straddle a strange line because too much of an O. Henry ending, it's like, oh wow, and then you watch it again, and you're like, okay, and then the third time you watch it, you go, oh, all right. Whereas this, every single time I watch it, it will be the road to that reveal, and when that reveal happens, it's gonna be like, oh wow,
It's like it's the Darth Vader I'm your father moment where it's coming, but because of the emotional impact on the characters and what it reveals and the new context it provides, it is always going to be powerful. It's not the haha gotcha like the M. Night Shyamalan thing where it's like he was dead the whole time. It enriches the story, and that's, I mean, I haven't seen Sixth Sense in a while. As far as I'm aware, I still love it, but I'm kind of scared.
You still love it.
I still love it. But you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit gimmicky, and it has become gimmicky to kind of have that whole like, you thought you knew one thing, but it's really another. This is that, but it's also been masterfully built to, and it's the emotional climax of the film because it's a situation where, like Frank, we are trying to figure out who is this guy, what happened between these two that has made this so personal. And again, it becomes even more confusing when Harmonica helps save his life in that amazing shootout. And even Jill calls him out and she's like, what are you doing? Like, and he's like, I helped him. That's not the same as saving him, or whatever the line is.
He said, basically he says, I didn't let somebody else kill him. It's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing as saving his life, or whatever the line is, which is a great line in a movie full of amazing lines. But like, you're just like, what is going on? Like, I don't get it. And it all pays off. And it's, again, like you said, it enriches the film. It's not something where once you know the secret, the film kind of is like undercut by that. You're so along for it, and it makes everything all the more stunning and tragic and amazing. But
hell, I'll rewatch this just to see Henry Fonda in the role again. Because that,
I mean, Fonda and this is really, again, as far as I'm aware, this is the only time he really played like a really, truly despicable person. And he disappears into the role in the best way. Like, he is part of the appeal. Fonda showed up to the set. I don't know if you heard this, but he showed up to the set. He got brown contacts and he got like a beard, like a fake beard put on. He's like, I want to look as sinister as possible because this guy's nasty. And the second he arrived on set, Leone was like, get rid of all of that. Take out the contacts, take off the beard. I want the audiences to, like, when we pan that camera around, when it spins around you, I want them to be like, oh my God, that's Henry Fonda. He's like those baby blue eyes, that piercing stare, that like that you've come to know and love. Everybody's like, oh, our favorite uncle, like the fatherly figure who leads us through the dark times. It's like you want every bit of that effect of the shock. It's him, but it's not him. And that's what's incredible about it, because again, like kind of like Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo, you get the sense that Fonda may have been typecast. He was always so noble, and he loved playing those roles, and you almost wouldn't expect something so sinister and nasty from him. Another, like, let's pull another deep cut. It's almost like Kyle MacLachlan playing the dark version of Cooper in the newest Twin Peaks season. You almost didn't know he was capable of something so dark and twisted.
And that newest season of Twin Peaks is another thing that really took a long time getting to where it was going, and a lot of people didn't like it as a result.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And I still haven't rewatched it, so I don't know whether I truly like. I loved it at the time, but I don't know if I still love it now. So I'm just putting that caveat there.
Just like I still love The Sixth Sense, you still love Twin Peaks: The Return.
But do you love Signs? That's the big question.
We'll get back to that. But
correct answer is yes. Yes, you do. Actually, fun because we've talked about the cast. There is a fun connection to Transformers the movie from 1986.
Okay.
The bartender, Lionel Stander, provided the voice for Cup in the Transformers the movie in 1986. The more you know, Sean.
The more you know.
Yeah.
It's I mean, Henry Fonda, I think, is one of the cast is incredible. Fonda is one of the most shocking things because, again, it's so against type. But Charles Bronson, who, like Clint Eastwood, is given very little to say and has this magnetic screen presence that is so powerful. Claudia Cardinale, who is very Leone knows how to cast these people because they're all just very, like, they scream movie star, but they carry this magnetic presence and you're so captured by them on screen. It's funny, again, this Roger Ebert review, I keep bringing it up because it's so clearly misguided, and I'm pretty sure he changed his opinion later on. He says Claudia Cardinale was a good choice for the woman, but Leone directs her too passively. She demonstrated a Blood and Thunder abandon in this other movie, but it's lacking in Once Upon a Time in the West. It's just stunning to me that that's what his takeaway was about Cardinale in this movie, because she's so fierce.
Yeah.
And like everybody in the film who has a lead role, and even the like characters who are just minimal but make such an impact, like those three henchmen at the beginning, everyone is so good and so memorable and so perfect. I honestly, it's hard to pick a favorite character because they're all so iconic, but I think Jason Robards as Cheyenne made on this watch be my favorite.
He's my favorite in this. Like, I love harmonica for, you know, all the reasons you're talking about, that Bronson can still capture the audience and the role and everything like that, just with his gaze, and Fonda sees his opportunity here to show everybody, you know, I can play other.
I can do this, yeah.
You know, I can do other things, and you know, even the bit parts, like that, you know, because there's so many actors in here where you're like, oh, that guy, oh, I know him, oh, that person, you know, that sort of thing. That it's just one of those things where Cheyenne is so. He is the comic relief. And so it's like you do wind up liking him the most, but he also has those beautiful philosophical moments, especially at the end when he's talking to her and he says, you know, I'm not the right man. And she looks over, you know, she's looking for, and it's just it's heartbreaking, but in a very human way. And for such a big epic film, it's not an unnecessarily dramatic or melodramatic moment. It's I think what it is Robards takes a character that could have been zany, like Eli Wallach's character in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yes, very similar.
And cranks it down and makes him more human.
It's almost like Eli Wallach's character on The Other Side of Life. Like, once he's seen a few things, a few more things. But you know, in addition to that, I think Cheyenne, he's comical and he is the comic relief, and he provides that philosophical underpin, like the kind of undercurrent. And he also gets one of the best action scenes in the movie, where he takes out all the guys on the train, which is just like, I think the moment watching this time where I was just like, okay, yeah, I love this guy. Like the boot, the payoff with the boot is so good. And just like, again, that scene plays on for, I think, maybe 10 minutes, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, or for a few dollars more, or a fistful of dollars, it probably would have been like, boom, we're done. But in this, it's like every little moment, and it's milked, and it all works because it pays off with these brilliant shots and these brilliant kills, and it's culminates in that, like, the boot hanging outside the window with the gun barrel through it. And it's all worth it. Like, just the slow setup makes it's the perfect way to set up that punchline. I think that's a lot of why I love him, for all the reasons you said. And again, it's funny, you know, bringing it back to this Ebert review. Ebert calls this a very, like, oh, it's a fun movie. It's like, it's fun. But like you said, Cheyenne and the tragic underpinnings of Jill's story in particular, and harmonicas, like, this is great. I mean, Roger Ebert is one of the greats, but like, I love going back to some of his old reviews before he reevaluates the film, just to remind us that we're all human, and sometimes we don't call it the way it should be called, or we just misunderstood it. This is probably how I felt the first time I saw it. I probably read this review and was like 100%. Now looking back on it, it's interesting to see. If you had come on and you had said, I didn't like it in A, B, and C, I would have been like, yeah, I completely understand. I still love it, but like, I get why, you know, the pacing and the things like that might not work for some people.
I just think that, I mean, I love the fact that you're referencing Ebert, and you're so right about Ebert, especially because we all love critics when they agree with us, and then we're all outraged when they disagree with us. And I think that Ebert's career, and he was humble enough to acknowledge this, is his whole underpinning is, I'm just a person too. I just watch a lot of these and let you know what I thought, you know, like,
and he used to go back. I mean, Blade Runner is a great example. I think he has three separate reviews of Blade Runner. He saw it once when it was originally out, and he didn't like it. He saw it again around the time of the director's cut, and he was like, okay, I appreciate it, but still. And then when the final cut came out, he was like, 4 stars, it's a masterpiece. And he acknowledges the fact that he's like you said, he's like, look, I'm only human. Like, sometimes with movies, you have to sit with them. This feels like one of those movies.
Yes. Yeah. And the only time I think that he ever nailed it on the first go was his review of North from 1994, which is featured in his book, I Hated This Movie.
It's one of my favorite reviews on the face of the planet.
One of the best reviews ever written. Honestly.
It really is.
I hope he never went back and changed it, because I'm like, that one, trap it in amber. Just leave it the way that it is. It's fine.
What were some other standout moments for you with Once Upon a Time in the West, in terms of, I mean, it could be like the action sequences, or maybe like the payoff at the end, but what were some other things that you really, really appreciated about it?
The character of the train baron or whatever, I forget his name, the guy who has had tuberculosis, and so he's in a brace, and he has to walk with, Mr. Morton is such, like, it would have been so easy to make him the mustache twirling evil capitalist, and instead you just see how this is a guy who has no control. How Frank has decided, you know, people need to see you running things, so I will let you. I won't kill you. But then when Frank shows up and he's trying to stand up, and he's trying to move, and he's right by the water, and he's been shot, and they just have this moment where they exchange a look, and Frank's got the gun on him, and Frank puts the gun away and just has, you know, you see this realization of, it's not even worth it to kill you.
Yeah.
You're dead. And walks off, and you just see him expire. And like, you feel so bad for him. You're like, this is
Well, it's not just that. You know what it is they, again, Leone sets up this brilliant subtext of this guy wants to get his railroad to the Pacific. He wants to get to the ocean. He has this painting that he's staring at. And when he dies, in this muddy water with the sound of the ocean waves playing over the soundtrack. And it just, again, the idea of this is like, oh, it's just a fun Western. No. These tragic underpinnings of like these people, these tragic figures. Again, a character that probably, it would have been okay if he was just kind of like the evil mogul who's like, I just want to build the railroad, and it would have been fine. But Leone doesn't want to do that. He wants to kind of break down the stereotype a little bit and examine it a little more deeply. And you feel for him, and it's very purposeful, I think.
And I'll actually, I mean, obviously the showdown at the end, how can you not talk about that? But honestly, I mean, oh my gosh, now I'm like thinking of all these terrific moments. Because it's a terrific moment when harmonica does show up, and and Henry Fonda says, "You spent $5,000. Here's $5,001. Every man deserves to make a profit." And just that nastiness that's being exchanged between them. But I was really captivated by the scene. It was so unique of them sleeping in a hanging bed and her trying to seduce Frank to get the upper hand, and Frank going along with it and saying, "Yeah, you've done this. You know how to make a guy, but there's a quicker." Like, you get this, like, Frank is just impervious to, like, he's letting you know that he's so malevolent that he's going to be the odd guy that she can't.
Right. Well, she
over.
thinks she's got the upper hand and she's playing with him, and then he flips it around and starts playing with her.
Right.
By saying, like, he's like, yeah, you don't seem to mind. I mean, I'm the guy who killed your husband. I mean,
right.
Come on. And you start to get the sense of, like, he's combating her. He's meeting her on her playing field, and he's like, no. And it just gives it that ickiness that is so so effective. Like, the scene is so effective. But I love that you bring up the here's $5,000 plus one. This movie, again, I don't remember. I want to go back and watch the Man with No Name trilogy. There's some great lines in those films, but this one feels particularly fond of its dialogue exchanges. There are a few really, really great ones. One of my favorites is the inside the dusters there were 3 men. Inside the men there were 3 bullets. Like that kind of stuff. These very, very smart things. But then there's I think probably my favorite exchange in the entire film is when Harmonica quote unquote sells Cheyenne for the money, and he basically talks about, like, oh, Judas sold Christ for this many dollars less.
$4,970 less.
Yes, and Harmonica goes, there were no dollars in those days, and he goes, but sons of bitches, yeah. Great line. This movie is full of great lines. I watched Johnny Guitar, another masterful Western that I'd never heard of before. Brad Gullickson was on the show to introduce me to that one, and I'd never heard of it. And I realized, watching the documentaries, learning more about Once Upon a Time in the West, Johnny Guitar is full of stuff like that. And it's so clear how much of an influence it had on that film. Just that, like, that just glorious dialogue that you just like, when you get a great script and you get people who are just relishing in their ability to write great dialogue, because there's so many great lines in this film.
I want to ask you, because this is sort of the thing. There's another guy affiliated here with the Nerd Party, Mike Schindler, and he and I have done shows, back and forth through the years and everything. We're overdue for one. So Mike, if you're listening, come on. And one of the things that he got me hooked on was double features, right? And it's sort of become a thing for me now. If you are planning a double feature, right? This is Once Upon a Time in the West, and then there's like a lunch break or whatever, or a nap, and you say, what's the second film? Or is there a film before it? Like, what are you pairing with this film that acts as either a complement or a contradiction to accentuate what this movie is and what it's about?
Well, I think, honestly, I haven't seen High Noon. I hear that was a really, really big influence on this.
Yeah.
I know in particular, like, Leone went back with his screenwriters and just watched a whole bunch of Westerns, and they really just wanted to make something that sort of just spoke to all these different elements of the genre. But frankly, because this is the easiest answer, because I was just talking about it, Johnny Guitar, once they mentioned Johnny Guitar, I was like, oh my God, of course. Johnny Guitar, like this film, has a strong central female protagonist who is almost the lead, kind of in a similar fashion to Once Upon a Time in the West, but that very intelligent, almost like very snappy, witty dialogue. Johnny Guitar is full of that, and it's so clear, not just the dialogue, but the cinematography and the slowness of it. Just the taking the time and letting things build and unraveling the mystery of who all these characters are. Johnny Guitar, when Brad suggested it, I was like, that sounds like a really goofy, because it sounds like a not an exploitation film, but just like one of those throwaway Westerns. It's not. It's a masterpiece. It's an overlooked masterpiece. But it fits so perfectly with a lot of the themes here. And they're both on a similar level. Like, I think I prefer this film, but Johnny Guitar is an absolute masterpiece, and there is a lot to discover and enjoy about that film, and all those things are very similar to the things that you can admire about this film.
I've not seen Johnny Guitar yet, so I can't pick that one. But maybe because there's a part of me that's cruel and wants to trap people in the theater for as long as possible, but also because it's a film that also takes its time and builds and has tremendous cinematography, as I would pair it with Heat by Michael Mann.
I haven't seen Heat in so long, but I do remember it.
That is a movie that much like this one, people had trouble plugging into, because it was like, wow, this is taking forever to get where, and then it hits where it's going, and it's like, oh no, don't end, keep going. Like that sort of thing. And even has the big showdown at the end between the two characters, and everything like that. So I would say that Heat would pair with this really, really well. But bring a seat cushion next, or maybe a pillow, because Heat is about 3 hours or so.
It's about
its
as long as this movie too. And that's what's funny about it. The movie almost feels its length, but again, I never held that against it. Like it's such a stunning film, and it's so beautiful, and it does feel like one of those, like, I would love to see this like remaster, a 4K remaster on an IMAX screen, just like the full scope of the film.
Yeah.
And just immerse. It's one of those perfect films where you just want to like immerse yourself in it, and you want to it is such a perfect encapsulation of like, this is cinema. This is what the art form is all about.
Which, as I've said before, and I always go back to this, it infuriates me that Phantasm has a 4K remaster. And this doesn't.
This doesn't. So that's the world we're living in.
It doesn't make sense, man. But as we said at the opening, this is my first appearance in 2020. This is where 2020 turns around.
I think
so. We're going to get that 4K remaster.
I think this episode is going to push for a 4K remaster.
Book it.
How do you compare this to the Man with No Name trilogy? Like, does it feel like it's on another level? Do you prefer like the run and gun kind of sensibilities of the Man with No Name trilogy? Like, how does it compare and contrast, and do you have a preference?
Wow, that's a very difficult question, because I've been soaking in the Man with No Name trilogy for years, so it's
right.
Which one do you prefer? Well, I mean, I love chocolate ice cream, but I love strawberry ice cream too. Why are you making me choose? But honestly, what I would say is that Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More feel like they belong to themselves, and then Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and Once Upon a Time in the West, it splits into duologies.
I agree. It's interesting that the trilogy, the thematic trilogy, obviously there is a trilogy that's connected by Clint Eastwood's character with the Dollars trilogy. And the Once Upon a Time trilogy is more thematic because they're not connected by characters or story, but they are connected kind of thematically with this romantic idea of America and what it used to be. But you are completely right. I think The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and this film feel very much in the same vein. They feel very connected to each other. Again, I think it's so interesting that it comes at a point in Leone's career where he was 100% ready to say farewell to the Western. He didn't want to do it again. And the way he kind of like, his hand was forced and he had to find new ways to approach this genre that he felt he'd already exhausted every possible avenue and angle. But yeah, it is, despite the completely different tones and vibes. I mean, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a crowd pleaser. Not that Once Upon a Time in the West isn't, but it is definitely, it feels more like, this is going to sound like I'm putting down The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but Once Upon a Time in the West feels masterful. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is 100% a masterpiece, but this is masterful in a way that's like, again, like Kubrick or maybe Kurosawa, where it's just like you are so in awe that you're willing to sit with the slowness of it because of the fact that you're witnessing something really cinematically powerful.
You know what? I am going to put it this way. This is my way of agreeing with you. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, especially after seeing the first two, feels like, oh, all right, lightning in a bottle. You got it. And then this, you realize, oh no, that wasn't lightning in a bottle. You figured it out.
Yes.
There's an intent behind this structure that, there's intent in the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, of course. But with this one, it proves it wasn't a fluke. This is yes.
And not just a fluke.
It wasn't luck last time.
It wasn't luck. And not only that, he was willing to break from the mold. Like he was like, if I have to make another Western, I'm going to make a Western that, I can only make Westerns, huh? Okay, studio system. I'm going to make the most unconventional Western. Like you think I make like the fun, violent, like action-packed, exciting. No. I'm going to prove to you that I'm more than that. Again, it sounds like we're putting down the Dollars trilogy, which I'm not trying to do at all, but this does feel like him trying to make a purposeful statement of like, you are not going to pigeonhole me. Even within this genre, I will not be pigeonholed until like, I'm just the guy who makes the Western.
Right.
This is the proof of like, I can make an epic. It's emotional. It's got all these different things going on, and it's slow and not conventional in the slightest, but it is still just as powerful in its own way.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I think that's why there is. I mean, I think the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly will probably always be my favorite film of his. I saw it first, and I just love that film so much. It's so much fun. But I can't dispute anyone who's like, but this is his masterpiece. This is the one. Right. And again, I haven't seen Duck You Sucker. I still haven't seen Once Upon a Time in America. But I don't know. That seems to be the consensus. Does that seem like a justifiable consensus now that you've seen this?
Yeah. No, it absolutely, like you said, if you forced me and you put, Once Upon a Time in the West and Good, the Bad, the Ugly in front of me, I'm going to have a hard time not picking the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because there are so many great things, but at the same time, I've sat with them longer. So I could seeing Once Upon a Time in the West a few more times and change and like shifting on that. Like that, I can see the material here where if I spent as much time with this as I did with that, then I could see the scales shifting a little bit.
So I guess if there's nothing else to discuss, do we want to do final ratings?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I mean, it's got to be harmonicas, right?
I presumed it would be.
So how many harmonicas on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, would you give Once Upon a Time in the West?
I got to give it a 5.
I've got to give it a 5 too.
For any of the structural defects that are in it, that, we already talked about that part. I'm not going to, go back over it, but like, especially once you get to that ending, all sins are forgiven when you get to that ending.
Yeah.
You know what? It's just the way film works,
I was, even right after watching it, I was like, that's a solid 4. And in the past, like, couple days since I've watched it and I've mulled over it and thought about it, and just like the brilliance of it, you're absolutely right. And especially that payoff at the end, the emotional payoff and everything you've seen beforehand. And again, it's a film you have to watch again and again, I think. And I think there are plenty of masterpieces that I've seen and hated the first time I saw it. And like Blade Runner, I was not a fan of. The Big Lebowski, I was not a fan of. You see him a couple times and you start to, when you know the themes, when you understand the characters, it's amazing how the film can reveal itself to you. And I think this is one of those.
And let me tell you, another mark of how great this is I've been walking around catching myself whistling harmonica's theme. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it's stuck in my brain there.
I thought you were more of a Cheyenne theme kind of guy. Well,
that would be my theme song as I'm walking down the street. However, I'm whistling Cheyenne. I'm whistling harmonica because that's just easier to whistle.
That's completely understandable.
Yeah.
Well, John, this was first of all, it's wonderful to have you back on the show. I'm so glad.
It's wonderful to be back.
I'm so glad we got to watch this as the return, and that we both kind of got to discover it together. And you are doing a ton of stuff So tell the good people at home about it. On the Nerd Party Network, you just started a new show, but like you're already hosting God knows how many shows. Tell us.
Oh, no. I'm making many guest appearances. My joke is that I'm the Jim J. Bullock chair on the Hollywood Squares of podcasting right now. And only the older kids are going to get that joke. And I'm on a regular show here on the Nerd Party called Aggressive Negotiations. It's a Star Wars podcast. We do not spend time talking about the latest releases at Disney World and stuff like that. We go deep dive thematically, and we do book club stuff where we read the older books from the 90s and the YA books and stuff like that, and really explore sort of those nooks and crannies of Star Wars. So check out Aggressive Negotiations if you like it, if you like Star Wars, that is. And the limited run show that you're talking about is called House of Fincher, which I'm on with Nerd Party founder Tristan Riddell and special guest podcaster over from the United Federation of Podcasts, Brandon Shea Mutala, where we are in anticipation of David Fincher's first film in years. We're going through the works of David Fincher leading up to Mank. And it's a limited run, but once it's released, it's there in perpetuity. So check it out.
Go check it out. And where can people find you on the social medias?
Oh, on the social medias, I'm Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE, and kesseljunkie.com or Letterboxd is probably the most fun place to connect or whatever. But Sean, I know where to find you.
Yeah, where do you find me?
Do they know where to find you though, Sean?
I don't know. Well, you can find me at YaySeanDoorman on Twitter, at SeanDoorman on Instagram and Letterboxd. I've never really promoted my Letterboxd before. I feel like
that's because you put a review on there that was monstrous.
I gave a 5-star review to Independence Day that John still hasn't forgiven me for, but I think it's a classic.
The one-word reply I had to your review was no, with a very purposeful period at the end. Very much so.
But you can find me there, and I mean, make sure definitely check out the Nerd Party. Go to thenerdparty.com. So many great shows on there. If you're not already following, it's at Join Nerd Party on Twitter, the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. Highly encourage that. And John, let's do this again sometime. I wish there were more sequels to Once Upon a Time in the West. Why couldn't we have gotten the Cheyenne and Harmonica adventures?